become so grateful to your breasts. You're like, finally, this is the purpose.
Now we understand why they're called mammary glands.
Yeah.
Why are we mammals? Oh, we have mammary glands.
Hi, welcome to 9+9, the honest pregnancy and birthing podcast, where usually every week another woman or couple joins me on my couch to process their trauma. Well, today for various reasons we are in a different space where we can't just lie around, so we have to sit a bit upright. Luckily, this week Leah is joining me, who's a dancer and who has very good posture, so I hope I can also hold my posture like this. And we'll be talking about everything that there is under the sun, from pregnancy to what the universe throws at you when you're a new mom. And I have a feeling it's going to be a slightly longer episode, but that's fine, I guess. If there's enough stories, I hope you keep on listening and sharing this. So I'm just going to fix my hair and then we can start.
Hi, Mika. Thank you for having me on 9+9. I'm really excited to be here, and I think these are some really important things to talk about that are not talked about. So
I'm glad you found the time to sit here and have a chat.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the listeners of 9+9 are people who are pregnant or maybe even trying to get pregnant. And hence, the most interesting question for me always is, how did you approach this pregnancy? Because there's all these misconceptions and expectations and assumptions that we have of this pregnancy, how it's going to be and how the parenting journey will be. And I feel this is all the starting point, and often how we approach pregnancy is also how we approach birthing and parenting later. So how was it for you? Were you like very systematic? Did you read lots of books?
No. Pregnancy for me was unexpected.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, it was not a planned pregnancy, but it was still extremely joyous and happy once I came to terms with the choice that I was going to do this, because I think one of my greatest fears in life was actually deciding to have children, because of the weight of the responsibility that comes with that, and also, you know, the fear of the body changing with pregnancy and the fear of giving birth. So
there was a lot of fear.
These were big things for me because they're big decisions. You know, those are very big decisions, and I think I kind of was like, they'll come when they come. It'll, you know, if it happens in my life, it happens in my life. And, you know, if it happens with the right person and I feel like I'm in the right place and I can do this. So,
wow, I always felt that you had planned you're so comfortable as a mom that I always felt like you had
I'm glad that I give off the vibe that, like, you know, I'm such a chill mom that, like, you know, this was a choice I made a long time ago and I planned it out. No, so yeah, pregnancy was not planned for me, and I was still working and dancing and living between two countries. So I didn't feel like I'd really rooted, and part of my ideas in having a child was that children need stability. So I needed to find a way in that time period to create more stability in my life and be in one place, in one country. Also, you know, as a dancer, you're using your body. So through the course of the pregnancy, my body was changing. Yeah. And I also was choreographing, and I had a performance that I ended up doing when I was pregnant.
How many months were you pregnant?
I was about 7 months.
So you were beyond the morning sickness.
Yeah. And I didn't. Yeah, there was no morning sickness. It was just, you know, choreographing on a body that was different, and it was part of the role, but I couldn't do all the things how maybe I wanted to. It's much harder getting up and down.
Yeah, like how do you jump when you were suddenly...
Exactly, like jumping. Everything it's your whole shifting, and your weight is different. Like how you carry the weight.
Yeah, like
different.
Your center of gravity is suddenly in the front and in the middle.
Yeah, so it was challenging, but also...
You didn't fall down anywhere or like...
No, I didn't fall down. I didn't fall on stage, and actually in the performance, the character I was portraying in the piece was meant to be pregnant. But the audience was kind of confused because they didn't know if I was actually pregnant or if it was a fake, like, prosthetic. But I was actually pregnant when I was performing that piece.
That's a huge compliment, right?
Yeah,
like you're still light like a feather.
Yes, I guess I did a great job in my pregnant body. Yeah, so then I feel like I was just like running through all of those things. And then in my final trimester, I was like, okay, time to really like consider what's happening. And I think more I was focused on birth, because birth was it's coming. I didn't, I had in my mind the kind of birth I wanted to have, but that doesn't mean you get to have the birth that you want.
That's true. But so you were very goal oriented, like this is focus on the goal.
Yeah, like I really wanted to have a water birth. I really was reading a lot about natural birth, not having any kind of medical intervention in that birth. How do I avoid that? And now that I know sometimes you really can't avoid it. And I also spoke to friends and other mothers who had like natural home births, and they had their midwife with them or their doula, and what that meant to them. But these were in different countries, so I spoke to a friend, who was her baby was out a month old, and about their birthing experience in the UK, and what that was. And her partner was like very involved with the birth, and he was the one actually who was talking more to me and my partner about how involved he was in the birth and how he cut the baby, and he showed me lots of like great videos, natural birthing videos, and like took me through the whole thing, and was educating me on kind of different natural birth methods that are used from midwives. And I had another friend who was also, that was her journey with her 2 children, and she really took me through all the stories from her kitchen, like, this is how I birthed the baby, and my hands were on the counter here, and my doula was back here, and this is what I was thinking, and this is what was happening. And I was like, so to me it was like, okay, birth, it's like a performance. Right? So I gotta plan the show. What's gonna be at the show?
What's the music? Oh my God,
yeah,
my
music.
What's your playlist for the birth?
Yeah, what is your playlist gonna be like? What is all that? So all of that stuff is important, but now that I've been through birth,
and it was completely the diametrical opposite.
It was nothing what I had imagined or expected, and even like, so I would read these books, and I was reading kind of either one book that was really on the side of like completely free and wild, and then something that was just more medical information and what to expect. I think What to Expect When You're Expecting.
I never read that book.
Okay, so I read this book because it's kind of like the one that gives you all the information pretty clear and direct. So it really takes you through everything, but then there is a chapter on like, well, you might have a C-section, and this is a C. So I did read that chapter like, okay, well,
not going to happen to me.
Hopefully this doesn't happen to me. I don't want to think about it too much, because that was like, there's so much disappointment in that. And then when it did actually happen to me and I did have a C-section, it was really disappointing. I was crying when they were taking me into the operating theater, because I really knew what that meant also to the body and what that was going to do to my body.
I mean, theoretically, like there's all these, like in that book or even other books, that I didn't read any books on pregnancy, but like books or birthing. But people like, there are all these points that they give you, but they never really honestly talk about it. Like, like how a C-section is actually performed and what they actually do with you. And of course, they tell you that breastfeeding could be a struggle, which luckily you didn't struggle with because you found some, but that's all objective information. Like, I understand when you give birth in a C-section, they will cut you open, take the baby out. That's quite, like, that's a no-brainer. That's what they've been doing since 100 years or however long C-section exists. But what exactly happens?
Yeah,
like, were you awake when, like, did you see what they were doing?
Yeah, or you're awake. So for me, I mean, when I was waiting for my labor, so I waited until I was 41 and a half weeks, and I was quite happy to keep waiting.
Long.
I was very comfortable. I was moving a lot. I was dancing. I didn't have any, like, the usual, there's some swelling and you're uncomfortable, but I wasn't like, get the baby out, I'm done, I can't do this anymore. I was like, it's okay, because I was like feeling pretty good at that point in my last trimester.
Because you have to trust the body. I mean, you don't really have to do anything in making a human. Your body is doing it. It's I think the most beautiful part of it is that it's so intuitive. Like, suddenly they're growing organs, and like everything is without you doing a single thing. I mean, of course you're doing it, you're feeling the physical strain of it, and like miserable many times, but not like you have to pay attention. Am I growing the limbs, or am I growing the heart strong enough? It just does it.
Your body knows what to do. And then I think that's a lot of, just in general, pregnancy and birth, like you should trust your body and listen to your body. And I think from being a dancer, that's something that we just learn early on, and we are so aware of our bodies and listening, and it kind of will direct you. But I think a lot of times it's harder for people who don't work with the body.
Yeah, I would also assume maybe that's why your pregnancy was comparatively easy.
Yeah.
Because if you have swelling, you would probably know, okay, this is how
put
I
my legs
lift
up the wall. Yeah, put your legs up the wall, get an ice bucket out, and or like which ways to move, right, to shift the weight to maybe alleviate some of the strain that you're feeling on the body. That's true. But yeah, I was 41 and a half weeks, and then my doctor decided I needed to be induced.
What does that mean? Like, what is induction?
So there's different forms of induction, but I had a membrane sweep where like they actually come up and they sweep your membrane, and
like they rupture the membrane?
Yeah, and so that first induction did break my water. So my water broke. And
in the hospital or at home?
No, this was in the hospital. So it was,
a lot of water on the floor.
Yeah, it is quite a lot of water. I mean, I see why there's women who are worried about their water breaking in public.
Yes.
I think it happened to you.
No,
did it happen to you?
You remember when we were? Yeah, it was the second one. It broke, like it trickled.
It started trickling. You were having like a small trickle.
Where I had to sit on the Macintosh. Which was for the babies in case they pee. But it was actually
it was for you, and your water was trickling.
Yeah, that was a funny moment. But then it sort of closed by itself again until then it actually broke properly.
Yeah.
So the membrane opened and then all the water came out.
Yeah. So it was I had a full. My water broke, as they said, and then the labor started, and I was in hospital, and they were monitoring, like doing fetal heartbeat monitoring. But my labor wasn't progressing, but I was still having contractions. They were just very far apart.
So the baby can be inside the womb when there is no water inside?
Yeah.
For how long? What did they tell you?
Mine, that was like from a Sunday night to finally having a C-section on a Tuesday evening.
All right. And nothing happened to the baby? Like it was fine?
Yeah, that was a full, I don't know, almost 48 hours, I guess, until so you can, even if the water breaks, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to.
That the baby comes out with it?
No.
Oh, that would be pleasant though. Like it's just, all comes out in one gush. And
that would. But I think, so, I had my music and I had my different ways of thinking I could. But as you know, once you start having real like contractions, it's a very intense feeling. It is not a period pain.
No.
It's not I don't think it's a completely different kind of.
It's like stabbing from the inside.
Well, I mean, it's your uterus contracting and pushing, so it is the entire part of your body is. So this was happening to me, but then as I found out later, my daughter wasn't in the right position. Her head was tilted.
And why did you find this out later? Like they do ultrasounds, right?
No, they didn't know this until actually they performed the C-section and they saw her when they brought her out.
So they didn't do an ultrasound after to just check if everything's fine.
But they don't do ultrasounds then.
But how do they find out if there's an umbilical cord around the neck? How that sometimes happens, right?
Yeah.
How do they find out? They just feel it?
So this I'm not sure about. I won't give an answer because I don't know the answer. Maybe you can provide some more information to your listeners about that later. But I just know. See, this is the thing. I feel like, even now, there's a lot of things that I don't know.
Also, in that moment, you have to think, like, you're not thinking, you sort of trust the doctors. You're not thinking, will the baby survive? Was anything happening? You're just like, okay,
I guess
in birth.
When you're in the hospital, it's good because, they're monitoring you, they're monitoring the baby, they're making sure that their heart rate is fine, and that's why they have that. And then if they do find that their heart rate is dropping, right? And I think with me, they were like, at a certain point, they were like, well, you're not dilating more, and this labor isn't progressing. And
when did they decide that this was not progressing?
That was essentially after like 48 hours.
48 hours of labor pain.
Yeah, for me. So that was
Wow.
Yeah, and then I had to come to that acceptance that I
all
was going
this
to have
work was
all
done
this
for
work.
nothing.
Yeah, now I'm going to go for a C-section. But I do remember when they got me on the table and they did the epidural, and that pain was released. It was nice to not be in pain anymore. And I think that sometimes when you do talk to women who are maybe don't want an epidural, but then get to the hospital and are like, actually, I do want the epidural, but sometimes it's too late to get the epidural. I think that happened to you with your first pregnancy. So it's...
But it is, they are telling you, and I'm sure it is, like it's a really, like, it's beautiful when the pain stops.
Yeah.
The best feeling in the world is when the pain is over.
Yeah, when that pain stopped, I mean, and at that point, I mean, I didn't have a choice. That C-section was going to happen. So I was like I was crying because I really didn't want a C-section.
Yeah, also not after all of this hard work. Like you're in the labor and you're thinking, well, it's fine. I'm doing all of this so that like my body can naturally give birth.
I can do it. I've kind of planned, that I was going to have like a natural labor, and then I had no options.
How do you even survive 48 hours? Like, I'm just thinking like 48 hours in constant pain. Like I felt with my first one, I felt like I'm gonna die. Like really.
How long was your first labor?
Not at all long. It was like 10 hours or something. It was but
see,
I have no stamina. I was like, I'm gonna die right here, and it's fine. It's okay.
But you in your mind, you were very prepared, right? You're like, I'm trained as a hypnotherapist.
Yeah,
I can hypnobirth.
Oh,
I'm going. I know what I like. You felt like you were.
I think that's the problem that both of us probably had, that we were like, this is so natural, and this is what we've been doing since
our bodies are designed to do this.
Yeah, this is the only thing, like whatever we
okay.
humans decide to do in life, like, I don't know, do a corporate life or be a freelancer or slug it out, be a farmer. It's like the only thing that we're really meant to do is give birth, because this is what, like, how humanity advances, and it should be the easiest thing on earth, because this is the only natural thing, is walking and giving birth probably as a human. Like all of us can do that.
Yeah.
So it felt quite counterintuitive to me that it was such a painful process, even though of course you hear that it's painful, but the amount of pain it is I think quite unimaginable. But luckily in hindsight you're always like, I survived it. I mean, it's great. It's like
I mean, I feel like when you ask a lot of women about birth and their experiences with birth, and maybe even like when you ask older women, or maybe your mother, or sometimes they do say that because it is traumatic. I think in some ways every birth is traumatic.
Yeah.
So because of that trauma, you kind of block out some of it. So there's some women who can't remember a lot of what was happening.
Which is a self-defense
Which
mechanism.
is your body's ability to kind of safeguard you from that.
Because if you would remember, you would probably be physically broken, which is maybe also where a lot of postpartum comes from. But using that pregnancy time to prepare actually for the birth, it's great if you're finding your pregnancy enjoyable, like you really enjoyed it, and I think you felt great as a pregnant woman, also the way you look, like you feel very like, it's like this goddess vibe that you have, and like just like the epitome of fertility, and it's just beautiful. But maybe if it's too easy, then you also don't really are prepared mentally or physically for what's coming afterwards. Yeah.
Well, I think when I speak to a lot of women, they're like, because the pregnant body is so celebrated.
Yeah.
Right? The pregnant body is so beautiful. The pregnant body is glowing. The hair is good. The skin is good. You're okay with carrying that weight.
You finally have boobs.
Yeah, for some women, you finally have boobs, right? Even though they can be quite uncomfortable. Or, but then the postpartum body is so different.
Yeah.
And it's so different for every woman what that postpartum body experience is, but coming to terms with understanding that body is, and same time feeding your baby and recovering from birth, regardless if it was a vaginal birth or if it was a C-section birth, recovering from those experiences. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So I think it's good to talk about. So sometimes when you meet other friends who are pregnant and you're like, oh, do I want to tell them all this stuff? I don't know. I really want to tell you all this stuff, but it's not very nice. Yeah, it's hard.
But you gotta know. And I think then you're also more forgiving with your body. So coming back to the C-section, like if you really understand medically, I mean, of course, none of us are medical professionals, which I think is the whole point of this podcast.
Yes.
Because it's
no,
like,
we are not. We are not
this
doctors.
is what I felt, and I don't care like why I felt this way, but I felt this way when you were cutting my stomach open, and like then you're also much more forgiving to what you're just being grateful to your body that you survived this. Like imagine somebody cutting you open from one side to the other.
Having a major surgery.
Yeah.
That's true.
Any other major surgery, you have a knee surgery, people are so forgiving, and they're like, you
but
need
people
your
aren't
resting
forgiving
period.
with women who've had like C-section and understanding that's a surgery. And I think everyone is so focused on the baby. You know, it becomes so for most women after you give birth, it's all about the baby.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about the mother anymore. It's not about what does the mother need in this period. How can I support her through this process? It's like, oh, where's the baby? Can I see the baby? Can I hold the baby? Is the baby eating enough? Are you producing enough milk?
Yeah, that's another stress that comes on top of you, and you're like, well, I cannot sit upright, and I'm literally peeing and shitting myself right now. So yeah, the baby is probably fine.
Yeah, and you know, all those things that you hear are really true. You should make sure your doctor does prescribe you a stool softener.
Yeah.
For the first time, you have to
because
go
they take
after
out your intestines, right?
Yeah,
Like
so that, like, I was like, what is this pain? Because my doctor forgot. Yeah, forgot to give me that important piece of medication.
oh God.
Yeah, so I was like, I think I missed something here. And it was really painful. Like, I was in, like, kind of extreme pain when I needed to go to the bathroom after the first time after birth. And it's, you know, something women should know.
I always thought it would be the opposite, because if you think about it, they're taking out these 9 meters of like intestines, and then they're pushing them back in. You would assume that they got like some extra massage, so it would be like super loose motions after you're giving birth. That's what I always thought.
I mean, no, I think what it is your body has to figure out how to operate again. So even after a C-section, it's a big medical procedure, right? They're cutting through 7 layers. They're taking out all of your internal organs to remove the baby, and then they're stitching up, right? So everything has been moved around. And anyways, everything was moved around in pregnancy, right? During pregnancy, everything gets moved up, right? To make space for the baby. So already all of your system.
I'd be so scared that they don't put it back in the proper order.
Yeah, what if things are, I mean, but that is, I mean, those are legitimate.
I mean, that's basic medical knowledge probably. Where do the kidney, like where does the liver go?
Yeah, I'm sure, I mean, I hope at this point now with C-sections that they know where everything goes and put it back in the right place. But still, yeah, it's a lot for your body has to reconfigure. Right, and your brain also has to understand what's going on with the body. So, yeah, that C-section really threw me. I was really not expecting a C-section.
And then when the baby came out, so the problem with her was that her neck was...
So her head was tilted back. So because her head was back, even though, so you want your baby facing down, head down, spine out, right? Mm. So, but if her head is tilted backwards, right? She's
stuck, like she would break her neck if she
she couldn't go down. She couldn't count. So, you know, she was looking up.
What I find really interesting about this is because even now when she gets angry,
that's true.
Like
her tantrum is like
her tantrum is this, like this is her, like I don't know if this is her comfort zone when angry, like this.
Yeah, that's true. She does. She loves to just, when she's having a major tantrum, to throw her head back and So, yeah, I guess that was maybe her, like, I don't want to leave the womb. I don't want to get out of here. This is really nice. It's comfy in here. You know, maybe she didn't want to come. So, yeah.
But then she came.
She did, yeah. And that moment, even, I mean, you are awake when they take your baby out in a C-section. So you do experience birth. It's just very different than your experience because you're, like, lying there. There's a sheet here so you can't see, but I think I could see in like one of the surgical mirrors actually what was going on. And then they like bring the baby. And it is still that overwhelming best moment of my life. You know, there's nothing more amazing than I think, you know, that final, when you have the baby and you see it. So for me, that is
descending from top.
Yes, it's still. But and then I think one thing that I was lucky to have, which some women don't have, is that I did have a doula. So even though maybe she was more of an advocate for myself and with my husband, so that he knew once that baby is there that it needs to have skin-to-skin contact, which can't be with the mother because you're still being stitched up from the surgery, but the baby can go with the father. So the father can take the baby and do skin-to-skin, which is the most important thing for babies to have immediately after birth. And then from that skin-to-skin, then they can transfer the baby to the mother to get it to the breast, so the baby can try to start latching, because that's the kind of shortest distance to get that child to latch and start a breastfeeding. So when I speak to like my cousin who gave birth in the US and didn't have a doula and didn't have somebody there with her, and hers was, she had an preeclampsia. So she, went in for what she thought was a routine check, and they were like, oh no, we have to induce you. You need to give birth right now. It's dangerous. So she didn't have that. And her breastfeeding journey was very difficult, and she had to work very hard to breastfeed. So I kind of already had that in my mind in my pregnancy, that breastfeeding was a really important thing that I wanted to do, and I wanted to make sure that happened. So I wanted to find out, how do I make that happen? So I do feel really lucky that I had that person there to help me make sure those things happened. So that skin-to-skin contact, getting the baby to the mother right away to try to get that child to latch and start breastfeeding.
Yeah, that's like, I feel in that way you were really lucky, because I know a lot of women who've given birth via C-section. Also probably because they're so concerned. Usually it's like an emergency, like with your cousin, that they're so concerned about everybody just surviving, that it's not about,
what happens next.
A beautiful breastfeeding journey. Let's first make sure everybody here stays alive, and then we can take care of breastfeeding later, which is, I think, still an option. Like if you work really hard,
you can work and you can get support, and you can have a lactation consultant come in and help you. But that initial stage, there is a way that you can kind of, I think, certain tools that can be done that can help breastfeeding start. But you need to have somebody there who knows what those things are and can make sure that they happen. And sometimes even for the partner of the birthing person, it's a lot for them too.
Of course, like you're standing there and you're seeing so much blood, and then you're seeing the
baby,
and
also you're like supporting your, okay, we'll call them the birthing person. You're supporting the birthing person, you're the partner to them. So, there is a lot of jokes about that, that role, and how they're, laying on the couch saying, oh, I'm so tired. But still, like, they have to be present for a very long time with you as well, and they have to be advocating for you.
Yeah.
So you really need to know, also going into hospitals, or depending on where you're giving birth in the world.
Yeah, that's true. You give birth to
I give birth to in India.
Yeah.
But I also have, friends who've given birth in Europe or given birth in the United States, and what their experiences were like there, and depending on the healthcare system that they're in.
Yeah.
So I think
there's a lot of resources which you can access online, so we'll put them in the show notes as well, because imagine you're all alone there, like there's your partner faints or your doula is not coming on time. Like there's a million things that can happen, so you have to sort of be self-reliant, even if it's even more things to take care of in this difficult journey, but it's just important to know, and then you can also help yourself if there isn't possible, or put your foot down and just be like, I want this baby on my chest right now, and I'm going to scream this hospital down, which I've been doing the last 2 days already, but I'm going to continue.
But it's important for, I think, in these, that women know that they do have that right, to say, like, this is what I want to have happen to my baby after the baby is born. I don't want you to wash the baby, because you're not supposed to wash the baby. Yeah,
so there is a lot of, the hospitals, obviously, they care, for them it's a business. Of course, there's also some caretaking side to it, and some people, hopefully, most people do this because they want to take care and be part of the beautiful journey of bringing people into this world, and little humans are cute. But in the end, they want to make money, they want to get
Yeah.
you out of there,
Yeah,
and
it's a
they
business.
don't care what's happening after you've checked out after giving
Yeah.
birth. So they don't care if you have a beautiful breastfeeding journey, they just care everybody should stay alive
Yeah.
and leave from here halfway fixed so
Yeah.
we can move on to the next.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, and definitely I'm a big advocate for breastfeeding. I definitely think it really helped me so much in how I was able to care for my newborn, and even kind of I did extended breastfeeding with her. So for me, that was something that was really important to me, that I wanted to make sure I knew how to breastfeed. So I did so that is when I think in my pregnancy I wasn't preparing in that moment of what I needed to be doing for the body in the pregnancy, which in hindsight I should have also considered, like how much the pregnant body can do, and even how you can still be working on, they say, like where you lift up the abs and you like hug the baby in. Have you seen that before?
No.
So I didn't know about this at the time, and I wish I did.
I've never heard of it.
So I've learned about it post-pregnancy, when I was like, oh, maybe if I would have done that, it would have helped my abdominals. My postpartum. So it's actually a technique where you kind of like lift and hold the baby. You can use the abdominal muscles quite a lot when you're pregnant.
Yeah, and they tell you to not do it
they
because
tell you
then
to
you
not.
get the diastasis.
But there's actually quite a lot that you can do, which can help you in that postpartum recovery. So it's like that kind of information I wish I would have been paying maybe more attention to.
Because then it would actually be 9 plus 9. Like
Yeah.
it's 9 or whatever, 10 months of pregnancy, and then 10 months later you'll be fine if you pay attention to this. If not, then your postpartum body might last like 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah.
Or forever.
Yeah.
If you're like, there's still people in their 50s who
Yeah.
can't sneeze in public.
Yeah, there's
So
a lot
don't
of
want
women who like have a lot of like postpartum issues that run for a very long time, because also not getting the support that they need or the resources that they need. So now, like, I know, oh, there's a pelvic floor therapist, and women can see that person when they're pregnant, and they can help them like in their pregnancy and post the pregnancy.
I always thought you do this only after
Yeah.
pregnancy.
No.
Like I know that there are these in Germany. They have these recovery classes which you start basically right after giving birth. Also, I don't know how you do these classes because you're basically 24/7 taking care of the baby.
Yeah.
But then, essentially, you can take out 3 hours of driving there, doing it, and coming
And
back.
bringing your baby with you. Yeah.
But technically, there are these things which you can do in person, but. If you can't, because you can't leave the bed, or you only get like 15 minutes in the shower until they start crying again, and you're not managing bottle feeding or whatever, so they're really attached to you. There's pelvic floor exercises that you can do by yourself at home, but also things that you can do in the pregnancy where you're still master of your own body in a way, like when you're not puking or feeling sick. Those moments you could use.
Yes.
I guess it takes a lot of self-drive to use that time to be aware that, all right, out of the 24 hours in a day, I feel terrible for 18, but whenever I don't, I have to use this moment, like carpe diem.
Yeah.
Those 20 minutes, I will do some exercises because it later benefits so much.
Yeah.
It's like you have to be very disciplined, honestly.
Yeah, you do. You have to be very disciplined. And I think, I definitely wish I would have spent more time in like that final trimester, or even throughout the pregnancy. If I would have known, actually I didn't have much access to different people who worked with pregnancy, or even knowing that there was a pelvic floor therapist, maybe I should start seeing sooner. And
so these exercises feel so ridiculous when you don't have any issues.
Yeah.
You're like, this is not even an exercise. I'm just like contracting some muscles. What's the exercise in here? It's so unnecessary, but it is.
But it is beneficial for later. I mean, I did see, when after I'd given birth, I was in the hospital, and they did have, I think, a physical therapist come and see me, and she gave me some very basically basic exercises, I think, because coming out of a C-section, how you start to move again, like the first time you walk is quite scary.
Because you think that everything's
well,
falling.
also because you've had an epidural, so you've had your body has been, the lower part of your body is not moving, right? And then what does that mean to move again? So your first walk is kind of like, whoa, what's going on here? And you have this, big cut through your abdomen and sutures there, and it's extremely painful. and like you're like, whoa, and like, maybe can you give me another painkiller? Like it's really intense, right? And then you're starting to feed the baby, you know, like.
Does it hurt when they lie on your stomach when you feed them? Or actually they're so
They're
small,
so
they don't really touch your
yeah,
stomach.
they're so small. I didn't find that so hard, and actually, I can remember in the hospital, like kind of side lying with her, which I found is a great breastfeeding technique.
Yeah.
For all women to discover at some point. And some women say they can't, depending on like
it depends
the
on
breast.
the size of your boobs.
Is the time of, yeah, I know you said
small.
If
like,
your breast, so I guess I have larger.
Like, I had to lie on top of my kid.
So I guess I had enough that I could just like, you know, so that was maybe one thing that's useful about having more breast tissue size, is that it's easier to do side lying. But yeah, like feeding your baby while you're recovering.
I think you become so grateful to your breasts. You're like, finally they have, this is the purpose. Like, it's
yeah.
fine, whatever issues you have with them, they're too small, they're too big, whatever, but great. Now they have a purpose.
They have a purpose. They're feeding a person.
Yeah, they're keeping them alive, and they're making them grow. Like, they only live on that. Yeah. That's just incredible to me.
Yeah, it is. It's like, I think one of the...
It's like life force. They take it, they...
Now we understand why they're called mammary glands.
Yeah.
Why are we mammals? Oh, we have mammary glands. Yeah, it's true. You really, I think, come to appreciate, as you said, what your body can do by being able to, you know, give birth.
It is primal in a way.
It is primal. It is very primal, and to be able to feed your own child with your own body.
This for a very long time.
Yes.
Comparatively.
Yes.
But I'm saying this without judgment, saying
very long time. Yes, I'm sure. No judgment
no
here.
judgment ever.
Yeah. No.
But you actually faced a lot of judgment from society, and then...
No, I mean, I don't know. Maybe
or you're just so secure in yourself.
I think I'm just so secure in with it that it wasn't anything that actually really entered my consciousness. Like if I did maybe, or even I really did try to breastfeed as much as I could, like in public, not extreme public space, but in social settings, right? Yeah. Where there's friends or family around, and kind of normalize breastfeeding. Yeah. And normalize seeing women breastfeeding. And that it's not something where you need to drape a shawl.
Oh God, I hate that.
You know, and like hide. Exactly. So you shouldn't have to feel like you have to hide, or you know that we have to hide this what we're doing, because you're feeding a baby. Like you're there.
And all of us. I mean,
everybody. We all were babies.
Yeah.
We all had to eat, and this is how we eat. Yeah. And it's not a big deal. So I think that for me, no, I didn't ever feel like I needed to conceal that, or even the fact that I mean, the kind of length of time that I did breastfeed my daughter, which was also kind of listening to her cues and deciding I wanted to complete that journey with her, but also listening to her and seeing when she was ready for it as well, and when she wasn't ready yet, and how I could do that. I didn't want to have to come up with ways to, like, some people, you know, use like different medications on the nipple that make it taste bad. Or like once the child is old enough and they start telling them, oh, the milk's gone bad. So I didn't want to give her this information because I didn't want to lie to her, because it had been a very natural journey for us. It had been very easy for the two of us, and it was a nice like relationship that you have to your child. So I didn't want to kind of convolute it with misinformation to her.
And also at some point when she's old enough that she would actually be able to process that information, you can take her along on that journey where you say like, okay, we're on this journey, it will have to end at some point, but let's move along together on this path and see whenever it trickles out, then we leave it. But we are together in this journey. Yeah.
So that's also, I think, part of when I am parenting now, is that I'm very much like, tell them the truth. We'll talk about things like death. Yeah. You know, this is all part of life. So children actually can accept information very easily, and they're very receptive. So we don't have to be afraid to give them information. You know, it's better to.
And you are very gentle. Like, I feel this is a very gentle approach. Like, it's gentle on, maybe it's not so gentle on your body. It's actually quite hard on. It
was very hard on my body. Yeah, I would not. If you, it was extreme. Now I'm starting to realize how hard it was on my body.
Yeah, just the slouching.
The slouching, and because it keeps more oxytocin in the body, which makes, so basically when you're breastfeeding, you can't build muscle.
Oh, really?
No. So you're actually losing muscle and you can't build muscle. So that for me was coming from a background in dance where you've built this muscle before, but now throughout this whole process of like pregnancy into breastfeeding and postpartum, I'm losing muscle, but I can't build muscle, and it's not going to stay. And then because of that oxytocin in the body, it makes everything very lax and very relaxed.
Yeah.
So even when you're trying to maintain good posture, the body's just naturally wanting to go down.
It's just great when you do yoga, because you're suddenly, and I've never been so flexible in my life.
That's true, because when you are pregnant, you probably suddenly realize like, oh my gosh, my legs, they just move, because what that does is so that relaxation happens naturally in the body to allow pregnancy, to allow birth to happen, so that the pelvis can open up more.
Yeah,
So
like if your muscles would hold together your hips, then it would just break the hips. Even though it feels like your hips are breaking, but they're not actually.
They're not actually going to break.
Yeah, because you have that relaxant in your body.
Yes.
But even when you do, for example, yoga, you think you're becoming stronger because you can suddenly bend so much, but actually you're not, because you don't have the muscle holding it together, and it's just all rubber.
Everything becomes rubber. Yeah, pregnancy, your body's just relaxing the whole time and getting ready. And then the same when you're breastfeeding, because you're releasing those hormones, that oxytocin, which helps you feel and able to deflect a lot of things that are going on and happening to you. I think that those hormones help.
That's another reason why breastfeeding is so important.
Yeah.
I feel, of course, it's a choice by women to breastfeed or not, and it's great you have this choice, because sometimes also with your life it's just not possible to do it. But you should be aware that there's a sudden hormone drop as soon as the baby is out, and it's like worse PMS, or like, you know how these extremely depressive, suicidal thoughts you have when you have your period sometimes, or pre-period. It's the same thing, just that it keeps on lasting. And when you breastfeed, it evens it out to a point where you can sometimes be super happy, because it's just like you're on these happy hormones, which I think they should turn into pills and just give it to us.
I think they do. I think you can maybe get prescribed those if you go to the right doctor. Just be careful.
You're like, why are you always so happy? But it does give you happiness, like especially when the babies or the toddler, however old they are, they're on you. It's almost like you immediately feel this rush of happiness hormones, which keeps you sane. Which keeps
it keeps you able to deflect everything that you're dealing with, which is it is high stress taking care of young children. And I think that's also something that women should be, or whoever the caregiver is, it's not always a woman, but they should be given that understanding that it's high stress taking care of.
And probably when you do the breastfeeding journey in a slowly weaning out way, it's not cold turkey.
No.
You don't want to go cold turkey on your favorite drug for the past year, 2 years, 3 years.
Also, for your child, right? You don't want to just take that away from them really quickly, something that's really comforting to them and that they've had their whole life. And then suddenly it's like, no more booby for you. That is also there. So, the breastfeeding, so now when I talk to friends who are pregnant, I do encourage breastfeeding. I try to not overly, it's hard to not, that's what I'm saying, it's hard to not want to give all of this.
Yeah, maybe also all have to accept that we are all of us are judging, and all of us have like conceptions about how it should be, because this has been good for us, or maybe this has been so terrible for us, we don't want this for another woman for them to go through it. But maybe for them it's just the right thing, and it's like sometimes you just have to shut your mouth and be like, you do you.
Every woman needs to make her own choice on what's best for her. And for some women, breastfeeding isn't what they want to do, or pumping, right? If you have to return to work and you have to take your breast pump with you and you have to pump regularly, which I watched. I had a boss in New York who gave birth and then was in the process of coming to work and pumping for her baby. And, it's hard, it's tedious. It's
exhausting.
Hard. It's exhausting to have. So because I was in a privileged position of being with my baby, I didn't need to do that. But for women who do, it's really hard.
Yeah, it's quite. But then on the other hand, I took my baby to work, and a lot of people were like, oh my God, you're breastfeeding and working and it's such high pressure environment. I was like, you know what, whenever I feel pressure, I just take the baby and I put him to my breast and I'm like, no, I feel much better. I can deal with the stress now.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, more women should have the option of bringing their newborn with them when they need to return to work, and hopefully they're in a society where they have space where they can take time and they don't need to return to work in 6 weeks, which happens a lot in the US.
Of course.
And but being able to bring and in environments where it's okay to bring your children to work, and there's, especially newborns, where they do need to be with the mother.
Actually, newborns just sleep. They're not even such a nuisance. Toddlers are kind of a nuisance at work.
Yeah, toddlers would be hard to take to work.
No, but like
I know you've done.
So. I wouldn't recommend this to anyone. But like a newborn, like the first 3 months, they only sleep, and and it gives everyone happiness if you like babies or not. You see a baby, you can't help but it's cute.
That's sweet.
So you look at them, and it gives people some joy in life, whatever job they're doing, and then they can return to work. So it's like a baby therapy that you can give to people for free or charge for it.
Yeah, maybe that's the way to make money after a newborn.
Yeah. But in the capitalist society that we live in, but I'm coming back to returning to work.
Yes.
So for you, if we say that the fact that breastfeeding, giving birth, like your body's relaxed, your muscles don't build, and you're constantly losing muscles, of course, for you as a choreographer, I could assume you could still do because it requires your brain less than your body.
Yeah.
But being a movement artist and being on stage and dancing, like how was that returning back to work?
That I've found very difficult, returning, because the body post pregnancy is a very different body that you're working with. So everything feels different. And I think that, and also some of the issues I faced with diastasis, which is the separation of the abdominal muscles. I had quite a severe separation.
So how does that happen? Was that because you were working out during pregnancy?
It's just, it depends. It's not like for every woman. Some women have it and it closes naturally. Some women have very little separation. Some women have. Sometimes, actually, if your abdominals are stronger, so for a lot of dancers and people who work with the body, it's actually you're more likely to have more separation.
That's what I would assume, yeah.
Because you've kind of trained them to really hold together, and then because of that separation. So that, I think, for me has been kind of the hardest hurdle, where I just feel like I can't really, in the same way, lift up and lengthen and knit it together, like they say knit the abs together. Maybe if you take a Pilates class or something, but knitting, like where I feel like I can't close them. I can't bring it together. Like I could feel.
Which is beneficial that you are a dancer,
because I know
you can't do this.
Yeah,
but a lot of women who don't know their body, like for me, I am not very physical. I went to a physiotherapist after giving birth, way too long after giving birth, but I did, and then she made me do all these ab exercises, and I was like, I can do sit-ups like forever, because those muscles are up here, right? Yeah. And this is never
that's not your lower abdominal
muscles. With your baby is like this is all cool, but everything below that. And then she asked me, like, and I remember I was like on the floor, and like obviously my belly is like hanging out, and she's like, so now you pull in your abs, and I'm like, yeah, I am. She's like, she's poking. She's like, nothing's moving. You're not doing anything. And I was like, but I'm thinking I'm using my abs.
Yeah.
And basically, that connection between my brain and the abs was like,
there wasn't a connection.
There was no, but because I'm not a dancer, I don't know my body. I didn't know that I was missing this connection. Yeah. Because I never.
I guess you never had it.
I never had the connection.
You never had it to begin with, so you didn't know that it was lost now. Yeah. Well, maybe it's nicer to have that, because I feel like I always was like, yeah, this is missing. How do I get that? I can't get that same feeling back. I can't engage my abs in the same way that I used to be able to pre-pregnancy.
So how did you?
So I'm still working on it.
All right.
Like, so you can continue to work on it, and I'm still working on, because I had what they say 4 fingers, right? So a space like this. So I'm still working on bringing them in, but I'm not there yet.
Wow, so you can put like 4 fingers
Initially, yeah. Initially, but like this direction, right?
Yeah.
So that, I mean, that's like
that's half your stomach.
Yeah. And that's
I mean,
a gap.
it's literally like your stomach is like 12 fingers big. And
you know, a lot of women, and I do it with myself, like you really struggle with this stomach that you have, right? And anyways, we've been conditioned to believe that women aren't allowed to have stomachs, that women are supposed to have this flat space between their pelvic bones, which is pretty much impossible because women have uteruses. And the uterus expands when you have a baby, and it gets bigger. And maybe it goes back a certain amount, but it's not going to go all the way back to what it was. And so...
Which is another reason why breastfeeding is important, because
it does help the uterus contract.
You feel in the beginning, in the first few weeks, every time you breastfeed, you get period pain, because every, like light period pain was for me. Yeah. Because every time the baby helps the uterus contract.
It helps to signal to the body that uterus should contract and start to shrink. So all of this stuff is tied in. It's part of the design, the very intelligent design of the body, how those signals can happen in the body. But yeah, that, so I think it's hard because I do even remember as a child, like seeing my mom struggling with her body.
Same, yeah.
I'm sure you saw with your, so my mom, like, I can remember her, like, with her lower stomach, her kind of, because my mom was very thin, she worked out a lot, she was in great shape, but, there was still this stomach there. And I know for her, I could see her even struggling with that.
Actually, yeah.
As a child, I can remember seeing her, like,
and I felt as a child, you could see this, like, I have this memory of a couple of my friends' mothers. My mother wasn't very slim. So it was like, overall, she was a bit more, like, meat on her bones.
Yeah.
But with very skinny women, and it seemed it was only mothers. And back then, I didn't make that connection that like it has to do with childbirth, or they had a child, hence their mother, hence they have that. They're so skinny, and then there's this lump. And other women who didn't have children and were skinny, they were just skinny.
Yeah.
So and they didn't have all these resources.
No.
I mean, even we don't if we don't research about them.
Yeah, but this information, so even it's not very available. When I was going to my doctor postpartum and saying, I'm having all this pain, I'm having this issue, this is a problem for me. And they're like, no, you're fine. Like, we'll just check you, and your scar is healing, this is fine. But actually, I was having a lot of problems, and I was asking for resources from my doctor, and they were giving me no resources. So I was actively like asking for help, I think, when I was like reached 8 weeks, and they say after this C-section, 8 weeks is kind of that cutoff point, then you can start moving again, you can start doing more. But I was like, I'm in so much pain, I can feel that this is wrong. Like, nobody was giving me any, resources.
Because medically you were fine, like there wasn't a problem.
Medically you're fine, yeah, medically you're okay. But that doesn't mean nobody is checking women to say, like, what's going on internally. And nobody did a internal pelvic floor check, which now I've learned is something. That pelvic floor therapists can do an internal check on women to actually really see what is going on in there, and then they can help them. But most women don't get that because they don't know I should even go and see somebody.
And who and where
and where do I go? So, and also women shouldn't be leaking. You shouldn't be peeing yourself, which I think happens to everybody. Like, you go to that first birthday party
on the trampoline,
and you go on the trampoline, and you're jumping. Oh my gosh! And there's like, suddenly you're like,
that was him.
That wasn't me. Forgot to put a diaper on that one. Yeah. So like, that's also something that and I don't know maybe how much women talk to it about each other.
Yeah, like we
when
put
it happens.
Obviously everything that, like, you have a couple of resources and people that you found online, which we will share in the show notes.
I wish I would have had a friend when I was going through the last stage of pregnancy who was like, hey, but now
like, just in case there are this is the list of things that you should do pre-pregnancy, in the pregnancy, after giving birth, while giving birth, and then also once your child is like, you're done and dusted with breastfeeding and they're just out in the world, and you can finally find like an hour or two for yourself where you mind your body.
Yeah, I think women having time, like getting the time to actually attend to my body And at first I didn't know like what I should do first. I think I just wanted to move. So I made the mistake of thinking I'll just go for gentle jogging, which is the worst thing that you should do because everything was still stretched out. So I kind of put a lot of stress on a dancer's knee, which anyways, dancers' knees are, a point of conflict in the body. So I kind of exasperated and gave myself a knee injury within, I think.
Which at least was such a legit knee injury that you got to go to physiotherapy.
That's true.
That's true. Which then was beneficial because you could tend to all the other things.
Yes.
But you basically have to come up with like a legit
you need
problem.
Yeah, because it's not enough to have a problem being postpartum and having to heal the body. It's like, because also you're taking care of another person who requires so much from you. So it's a lot for women to go through. So good to have these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. Thank you for sharing.
Yes.
But it's been a beautiful journey, and all is well that ends well. And I think now we're towards the journey.
We're on the other side.
Yeah, on the other side of it. Yeah.
We're on the other side where we can sit here and be like, ladies, you should try this. You should do this.
Yeah, after they've cut through 7 layers of your stomach, still you'll be fine.
You'll be fine, yeah. And you will be fine. Your child will be fine. And you find your way, for sure.
Yeah.
We all find our way in a different path. But definitely, I think more conversations are good.
And it's a lot of mental things. Like you have to know that I will go through this and I will reach the other side and I will be fine. And it's okay to feel lumpy and terrible, and it's okay to feel sad and like wanting to smash things against the wall, because eventually you will stop feeling like this. You just have to believe and hope and find resources and talk to people and realize when you have the problem. There are some easily identifiable problems, like where okay, I have problems with my C-section scar, I need to see a doctor. And then there are things like I have Diastasis Recti, or I have depression, and
depression
I
is a huge
have
part
to
of it.
find the resources and act upon it and do something.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it is important to talk about postnatal depression for women. It's a real thing. I mean, I think a lot of women have very severe. Sometimes, I mean, I know I definitely had a lull where I definitely felt like, because there's so many hormones that your body is processing post giving birth, where that hormone drop happens, and then maybe there's other hormones. There are other hormones that your body is building back up for you, but those highs and lows are super extreme. And then you're not sleeping, and then you're recovering from whatever your birth was, and you're caring for your newborn, and that's a new thing for you if it's your first child, or even if it's your second child. It's a different baby, so they have different needs, and what they want. So if you are experiencing any kind of those depression, you need to seek help and know that it's okay to seek help, because I think a lot of women just take it on and expect that they should just soldier through all of these things, and they should just be able to just handle it, right? But women need resources and support. Yeah. So it's important to ask for help.
And find the resources.
And keep asking for help and keep asking for resources, which in a way, in hindsight, I wish I would have done more of that. I wish I would have said, like, no, I really could use more help with understanding how do I heal my body post-pregnancy so that I can return to dancing and moving and doing all the things that I want to be doing, and not feel like I'm up against this wall of like the body that's just not responding, so.
And actually women are really willing to share once you open the conversation.
Yes.
And everybody has a story.
Yes.
It's just starting that, and sometimes that's already helpful when okay, I can see that person. Yeah. That comes recommended, and they will help me, hopefully. And then eventually you'll come out into the light and you'll feel fine.
Eventually. Things will return to the new normal.
Yeah, it's completely different.
But there is a lot of acceptance that you have to find, and accepting your body after it's changed is very hard. I think, like, just being able to accept those changes in your body, and you're not going to have the body that you had before you had a baby. Yeah. And you can't expect to have that body, because your body's done something really incredible, and it's designed to do that, but it does change.
Yeah, like even if it doesn't look like this on the outside, inside
Yeah,
things are changed as well.
Things have changed on the inside, and even, you know, emotionally and mentally you've changed as well. So
I think there's a lot of gratitude towards the body. Like it's not the same anymore, and you can't perform the same things that you could do earlier. You don't even feel the same things that you felt earlier, inside and outside. But then, hey, you made a human.
Yeah.
And that person's walking the earth.
Yeah.
And it's going to change the world.
And you get to be with them every day, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, it is the most beautiful thing, I think, being able to, you know, be with your own child and experience them growing and how they're, like, seeing the world and interacting with the world, and you're part of that journey with them. So I do think there's nothing more beautiful than that. And I do think children are the best kept secret. So I don't want to scare anybody away from having kids. I think have children.
Yeah.
I think it's like I was always kind of a little, I guess I was afraid of it. And now that I'm done, and I'm like, oh, why didn't I do this sooner? This is so cool. Maybe if I would have had kids younger, I would have recovered faster.
So, but then you wouldn't have done all the cool things you have done in your career.
You wouldn't have all the life experience or the career experience that you had before. So that's also, everyone has their own story and their own journey, and things happen when they're going to happen for you. Yeah. So that's okay too.
Well, thank you for coming, Leah.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Yes.
And all the resources that Leah and I have spoken about will be in detailed show notes. And this podcast has been produced by Harkat Studios. You can find more of their work on Instagram if you look for harkat.studios. And if you have any feedback or stories that you would like to share, you can email us to 9plus as a word, PLUS, 9@harkat, HARKAT.in. And thank you so much, and we'll hear you next week. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.